So to be clear, Mr. Trump has no financial relationships with any Russian oligarchs.
That's what he said. That's what I said. That's obviously what our position is.
Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, has just received a suit, or is being sued by Alvin L. Bragg. He is the Manhattan District Attorney, the District Attorney for the New York County. He is suing both Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary, as well as the entire judiciary itself, and Mark F. Pomerantz, which we're going to discuss that in a minute, because they're actually suing on his behalf, which is why he's listed in the suit. It's a little strange. We'll get there. You can see the suit right here. It's in the center screen there. We're going to go over it. We've literally just had this for less than an hour, and I can tell you what we've been able to tell by looking at it and by sifting through news sources. It's reasonably straightforward, I think, but this is still very new, so we just wanted to make you aware of it, and you can keep your eye out if you're interested in learning more. We'll follow up. We also have a link to the suit in the description, so if you'd like to download it and go over it, you can. So why this and what exactly is going on? Well, as you know, there were 34 felony counts that were issued by the state of New York against Donald J. Trump. Immediately, members of Congress, and we discussed this, it was grossly inappropriate at best, came out and criticized the DA, criticized everyone involved, said that this was a witch hunt, and has gone above and beyond to even attack the DA personally. Really, for doing his job. There was enough evidence that he was indicted. The indictment process proceeded normally, and now there's going to be a trial, which he is entitled to. And Congress does appear to be interfering with it, and Congress even subpoenaed Mark F. Pomerantz to testify and to give warrant for any evidence that was given to the grand jury as to Trump's guilt or innocence. This is essentially tampering with the investigation. At least that's my view. I think that's a reasonable view when you're looking at it. And that appears to be the view of Alvin L. Bragg, who has now filed suit against the entire Judiciary Committee of the United States Senate. In part, it appears he seems to be seeking the halt of an injunction. He seems to be seeking an injunction against the subpoena for Mr. Pomerantz. That's why he's included, even though it's the goal of this suit is to stop the subpoena against Pomerantz. The easiest way, ostensibly, to do that is to name him in this suit, and probably by doing so, I assume I haven't I've skipped to the end yet, but my assumption is if he's included in the suit, then that would give jurisdiction over him to say that he cannot testify. I don't think he wants to testify, don't get me wrong, but then at least he would have cover to avoid testifying, because the state of New York would order him not to. So that's where we stand. This is unprecedented. To the best of my knowledge, it's, I don't know if it's ever happened. New York Times is saying it's extraordinary. That may or may not be unprecedented. I've never heard of this. So it's a 50-page lawsuit filed in the Southern District of New York, and accuses Mr. Jordan of a brazen and an unconstitutional attack on the prosecution in this case, and a transparent campaign to intimidate and attack the district attorney himself. It also says, quote, rather than allowing the criminal process to proceed in the ordinary course, Chairman Jordan and the committee are participating in, not sure where that's coming from. Hold on a sec. Are participating in a campaign, and okay, we're going to have to, we'll switch that out. Okay, let me see. I have another list. I just lost the list I was reading from. Apologies. So let me see. I know I've got a few more quotes here. Let's see what else it says. All right. Basic principles of federalism and common sense, as well as binding Supreme Court precedent, forbid Congress from demanding testimony either from the district attorney himself or from Mr. Pomerantz regarding justification for this suit. And they are correct. 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐬 is in the live chat. He knows more about the Constitution than I do, but I can't fathom him disagreeing that only supposed to be oversight in regards to job of the legislative branch. Congress does not provide oversight for a district attorney in the sovereign state of New York. So this is unconstitutional and probably illegal. Subpoenaing a former line prosecutor to talk about an ongoing criminal prosecution and investigation is no less an affront to state sovereignty than subpoenaing the district attorney himself. Chairman Jordan claims he is seeking to conduct oversight, but he has no power under the Constitution to oversee state and local criminal matters. Yeah, period, end of discussion. That is absolutely 100% and unequivocal. Absolutely. So he has absolutely crossed a line by all of this. This is one of the things we've been, it's insane what they've been doing. Delighted that they're taking action. Now, this is not going to result, I think, in any anything criminal. But having said that, somebody needs to stop them. Congress cannot force a former prosecutor to make extrajudicial statements during a criminal prosecution about that prosecution or related criminal investigations. The statements that the New York rules of professional conduct forbid, in part because they could prejudice Mr. Trump's right to a fair trial and prompt due process concerns. What they're saying is, look, they're asking, I think it's a former prosecutor, to come in who assisted in this case and in the that they've built against Trump, and to testify as to what's in that case, as to strategy, yada, yada, yada. This is a complete end run around the prosecutor's ability to gather information and prosecute their case and give that case to a jury. He is not presenting this case to the judiciary on the Senate. He is not obligated to, and he doesn't answer to them under any set of circumstances that I'm aware of, either in Supreme Court precedent or in the Constitution. So, and by attempting to do so before the case has even gone to trial, they probably almost certainly intend to poison the well by attempting to discredit members of this case before the United States, before the trial has even been held. This is such a gross violation of everything the justice system is supposed to stand for and operate. I'm a little surprised that the Manhattan District Attorney has decided to take this step, but I am delighted, and I think it is the appropriate step. I'm surprised because so far people have been getting away with fucking murder in this country. I didn't think this would be the line that prompted someone to stand up. If it was going to be anyone, yeah, you can damn well bet it was going to be a fucking New Yorker. So, good on him. It's, yeah, it's definitely unprecedented. So what I'm going to do, we're going to scroll through this here. I don't know if the resolution is good enough that you can read that. You may be able to read that. If someone can let me know, I'm curious. 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐬 says this is a federal government overreach and an abuse of power. I'd love to have you in, 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐬, but I'd like to do this. This is just a breaking news. I want to do this pretty quickly. I think you and I should discuss this And if you've got time, maybe we'll do a downtime either today or tomorrow. I think that this is something that we need to discuss, and you understand elements of this better than I do. So I think it would be worth bringing you up here. But we'll save that for later. Fiona Robertson, Jesus, I really can't say that word. Pomerantz is included as a defendant because it's a way to make sure that the judge's ruling explicitly applies to him in the subpoena. Exactly. And it actually gives the judge two avenues. He can try to quash the subpoena, but if he does that, it's still subject to being overruled or appeal. However, he can now both quash the subpoena and have an injunction against him testifying, which he doesn't want to testify, but if he's compelled to by one means, an injunction against him testifying would give him cover to avoid it. So it seems to me, just at a cursory glance, that they're trying to achieve both. He's going to have basically two shields. One is an attempt at quashing the subpoena, which it does look like at first glance, it looks like this is an attempt to quash the subpoena. But even if that doesn't work, by being named here, this suit could result in an order to not testify, and that would give him legal cover to avoid testifying for the Supreme Court. Now, we all know that in matters of treason, sedition, and anything impeachable, it's actually perfectly fine to not testify before the Supreme Court and to defy orders in contempt of Congress. That's obviously not an issue in the United States. Obviously, the rule of law is not really particularly an issue. So, but it is good to know that if you're testifying in a criminal trial against a well-liked member of the Republican Party, you can get in trouble with Congress for refusing to testify. It's good to see that they've got standards. Treason, do what you want. But let's not say mean, nasty things about Donnie Boy. You may hurt his feelings. I've seen tissue paper thicker than this man's skin. All right, so let's see what else is here. Congress has no power to supervise state criminal prosecutions. No fucking shit. So I am a little triggered. In case you hadn't noticed. It triggers me when I see well-educated, highly experienced prosecutors having to state the fucking obvious to members of the U.S. Senate. But with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, since that appears to be the bar... was there any word? Did Barney the dinosaur decide he wanted to run for Congress? He couldn't do worse. Nor does Congress have the power to serve subpoenas, quote, for the personal aggrandizement of the investigators to punish those investigated. Yet this is precisely what Chairman Jordan is doing. He and his allies have stated that they want the district attorney to come to Capitol Hill to explain himself. He does have to explain himself to the people of his district and to the state of New York. That's it. That's all he owes anybody. And they have threatened that the House of Representatives will hold Bragg to account for indicting Trump. Yeah, I know. Modern Republicans hate it when people do their job. It's a little off-brand. Now Chairman Jordan has subpoenaed one of the district attorney's former special assistants to interrogate him about the official prosecutorial activities. But subpoenaing a former line prosecutor to talk about an ongoing criminal investigation is no less an affront to state sovereignty than subpoenaing the district attorney himself. Chairman Jordan claims he is seeking oversight, but he has no power under the Constitution to oversee state and local criminal matters. Precisely. And this is actually the same separation of powers, which is why Trump can pardon people at the federal level, but not at the state level. Trump, as president, has absolutely no say over criminal indictments in any given state. He is facing the state of New York, not the United States of America. They are two separate entities, a distinction I'm aware of a number of our members of the not executive, sorry, the legislative branch have a very hard concept with. The subpoena threatens the sovereign powers of the states, confidence in the secrecy of grand jury proceedings, and the integrity of ongoing criminal prosecutions. Let's see. Now they cite some case law. You don't need to; it's already in the Constitution. But I'm glad they're at this. This is. Let's see. Rather than allowing the criminal process to proceed in the ordinary cause, Chairman Jordan and the committee are participating in a campaign of intimidation, retaliation, and obstruction. Mr. Trump in particular has threatened New York officials with violence and with violent and racist vitriol. At a March 25th rally, for instance, Mr. Trump said, quote, "The thugs and criminals who are corrupting our justice system will be defeated, discredited, and totally disgraced." On social media, he threatened, quote, "death and destruction and to wage war if he was indicted." Mr. Trump also called District Attorney Bragg a, quote, Soros-backed animal, a dog whistle. Chairman Jordan repeated on television on March 23rd, calling District Attorney Bragg the Soros-backed new DA, left-wing DA Alvin Bragg. Mr. Trump even shared a social media post that appeared to be a picture of him threateningly wielding a baseball bat at District Attorney Bragg's head. And we've shared that. It's a threat, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stop being children, and it's a threat. He knew it was a threat when he made it. That was the point, and he knew people would see it as one. And we had this discussion, too. He may not have even, per se, meant it in that way. That's a fine nuance, but he was smart enough to know that's how people would see it, and that was kind of the joke, now wasn't it? These statements have had a powerful effect. District Attorney Bragg has received multiple death threats. In one instance, he received a package containing suspicious white powder with a note making a specific death threat against him. Let's see. Chairman Jordan has said, and other members of the committee have said, that the purpose of this inquiry is to conduct oversight and an examination of the facts supporting the indictment. The same facts already evaluated by an independent grand jury of New York, whose job it is to hold... never mind. Okay, misread that. Okay, yeah. Chairman Jordan and his committee have, in essence, appointed Congress as a superior grand jury that can flex its subpoena power to second-guess the judgment of New York citizens in the interference of a state criminal justice process. Yeah, sounds about right. Members of Congress are not free to invade New York's sovereignty for their or Mr. Trump's political gains. Congress has no authority to conduct oversight of Mr. Bragg in the exercise of his duties under New York law in a single case involving a single defendant. Nor can Congress force a former prosecutor to make extrajudicial statements. Yeah, we've heard this. Okay. Mr. Trump is free to avail himself of any and all criminal procedure processes available to him. Indeed, his motions in his criminal case are due in August. If he wishes to argue that the prosecution is, quote, politically motivated, he is free to raise that concern to the state criminal court. Chairman Jordan is not, however, free to unconstitutionally deploy Congress's limited subpoena power for raw political retaliation, intimidation, or obstruction. So they are now asking for two things. Yes, okay. Two things. First, he's asking that the subpoena served on Mr. Pomerantz be declared invalid. And now normally they'd say that he quash it, but and then second, that, yep, and if I'm reading this correctly, I'm doing this quickly, but, and second, that they cannot seek any grand jury material, or that, and they cannot subpoena Pomerantz because that would be interfering with confidential investigative materials. So it's two grounds on which they're trying to quash the subpoena. Looks like they're not seeking anything else, but it's clear he's pissed. And the way I read this language, he's actually making accusations of specific crimes, including obstruction and investigation, which means he is telegraphing that he is more than willing to actually bring criminal suits against them. That's the way I'm looking at this. He's telegraphing, look, that these are crimes. I'm using the criminal jargon here, and we can go after you at a criminal level if this continues. So I think that's what he's suggesting. Can we go over again why Pomerantz, who resigned over the failure to indict Trump previously, as why he is named? Okay, so he's named to give a second avenue for trying to stop his testimony. So he has been subpoenaed before Congress, specifically the Senate Judiciary Branch, to testify as to what he knows as to the evidence against Trump that got this indictment to happen, that led to the 34 charges. He does not want to testify, but Congress can compel him to testify, and I've noticed this odd thing, which is Democrats seem to actually be following the rule of law slightly more than Republicans in recent history, and it seems to me that if he's called to testify, he's going to do what he's fucking required to do and testify before the Senate. And if he doesn't, I guarantee you all of a sudden obstruction is going to become a very important thing to the same Senate Republicans who are saying, everybody obstructs Congress all the time, just a couple of years ago. That notwithstanding, he is now going to be forced to testify as a result of a subpoena. This suit seeks, from what I can tell, exclusively to stop that subpoena. It says a lot of other things. It accuses the judiciary of a lot of things. But all the fiery rhetoric aside, it's really got only one goal. Well, it's got two goals, one legal and one not. The goal in a legal sense is to stop the subpoena and stop him from testifying. So the first way it does that is it asks under, and I forget what the precedent is, but under a very specific precedent that the precedent is Watkins 305 U.S. and no, that's not precedent. That's actually code. And then Mazars is the precedent. Then basically what they're saying is, one, we believe that this subpoena should be rendered invalid because Congress has no power under Article 1 and all of these laws and all of this other stuff. It should be on the screen right now. I think you can see it. Let me make sure that that's highlighted. For these reasons, the subpoena should be rendered invalid. That's the first step that he's taking. Now, that doesn't require that, now that does not require that Pomerantz is on this suit. It simply says, we think you should declare it invalid, and I think this is going to work. I have no doubt that number 11 here is going to work. However, number 12 includes a backup. Even if the committee were able to demonstrate that it was valid, they won't, but let's assume for a second that they were able to. The subpoena would still not be enforceable because it would allow the committee to seek access to grand jury material, confidential investigation material, and information clearly protected by the attorney-client, work product, deliberative process, law enforcement, yada, yada, yada. Now, what he's saying here is that material is protected and cannot be forced to be turned over. And my suspicion is, if I continue on, what he's going to take the next step in this, which is say, not only is it protected, but he actually can't testify. He would be violating the law to release information. This is Pomerantz would be violating the law if he released this information publicly. So my suspicion is they're seeking an injunction against him, and by naming him on this, they can include an injunction against him testifying. That way, if the first proposed invalidating the subpoena fails, he can be subpoenaed, but then he can go and say, pursuant to a court finding in New York, I am barred from answering, and he can't be held in contempt because he's got the cover of the fact that this has actually barred him from testifying. So even though they're on the same side, he's listed as a defendant here so that he can actually be barred from testifying. Then he just shows up and says, sorry, can't answer the question. I'd love to answer all your BS, but I can't. Without it, if he shows up, he either answers, which he really can't do, or he refuses to answer, in which case he's in contempt. That's my read on it. I've been going through it pretty quickly. So, Fiona, I think Fiona and I are saying similar sort of concurrent things. Essentially, if it bars the release of this information, then he is going to be explicitly named as someone who cannot release the information. Ergo, it doesn't matter who subpoenas him, he's barred from testifying, but it also protects him from the consequences of not testifying because he's legally been precluded from testifying. That's my read on it. And again, doing this very quickly, we've had this for only, by this point, about an hour. So let me do a quick rundown of what we're looking at, why this is important, and then we'll let everyone get on with their day. About an hour ago, it was dropped that the Manhattan District Attorney has filed suit against the head of the judiciary. And let's scroll up here. The head of the judiciary, Jim Jordan, he's the chairman, as well as the committee, the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and Mark F. Pomerantz, who he's including despite them being allies in this cause. So the suit alleges that two things, and that gets me to the other thing which I did ignore. The suit alleges two things. One, that they are conducting an oversight investigation that is illegal and is a violation of the Constitution. Two, that this is a deliberate attempt to smear the prosecutors, to undo the prosecutorial work, and to undermine the sovereignty of the state of New York and undermine a legal and appropriate criminal process. That's his claim. That's his claim. I think he's on solid ground on all of those. However, he's not seeking any action on the second claim. He's not looking for anything on the second claim. So why make it? Well, in part because he's pissed, and two, to lay the groundwork, I think, for them to know that this is where his mind's at, which means he's actually got, he's telegraphing that he's got, in his view, course for criminal complaints against them if he so chooses, complaints that would have to be answered in the state of New York. So I think this is a deliberate telegraph to say, I've had about all I'm going to take of you guys. This is what you're doing. I see through it, and it's going to stop one way or another. Now, what he is asking for, the remedies he's asking the court for, is to stop this investigation, and to stop it preliminarily, at least, by means of keeping Pomerantz from testifying. And there are two ways to do that. The first is to simply quash the subpoena and say, sorry, the subpoena's invalid and it has no force, and since he doesn't want to testify, he's not going to testify without that subpoena. So that's the first thing. If that doesn't work, and if the court does not find sufficient cause to quash the subpoena, they're asking, essentially, if I understand this correctly, to make it so that he can't testify because it's part of a criminal investigation and is essentially protected, and he cannot hand that material over. If they find that, then the resulting ruling from this, because his name is on it, they'll have the jurisdiction specifically to enjoin him on this because he's been listed, and they'll say, sorry, bud, you can't talk. He doesn't want to talk, but that's fine. Now that he's been ordered not to talk by a court, if he goes up before the U.S. Senate, he can sit there and say, hey, I'd love to answer your questions, but I can't. So either way, it looks like they're going to put a stop to that. And he's also mentioned the baseball bat, which does not directly influence, actually, this. And I don't think it's a argument for granting the quashing of the subpoena. It's not a legal argument. So why is he including it? I think he's including it in part to poison the well a little bit, to say, hey, look, this is what we're putting up with down here. You got to shut these guys down. I think that's the first part, and that's perfectly fine. That's acceptable, and people do that in these things all the time. And I think the other one is he knows Trump's lawyers are going to read this, and they're going to read between the lines and say, okay, you've gone as far as you can go with the district attorney. All this shit has to stop. So now it's not going to. Is he going to lose more lawyers? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think this is a huge shot across the bow, on top of just being unprecedented to name the Senate Judiciary in this. So that's where we stand. I'm sure there's going to be many more revelations coming up about what this means and what this implies, but we wanted to let you know as soon as we had it, the best we could do with it on a very short period of time. So come join us on the Discord. We'll certainly be discussing it there. We'll have a link for it on the Discord as well. And I wanted to thank Fiona, too, because she's actually the one who sent that to me, so I really appreciate it. And so got that in breaking news. And let's see what else. We're going to be, Xander and I think, are going to get together and try to cover this in a bit more depth. But until then, hope everyone is having a good day, and we look forward to seeing you, barring any more breaking news, on Thursday for Downtime with Commander Lance McMillan, 9:30 p.m. Thank you, guys, and have a good evening.